Hello, I'm Neil Quigley and welcome to the latest episode of my Blogcast. Apologies, it's been a while since we've spoke. I'll explain why later on in this podcast. But for now, let's go back to New Year's Eve, the end of 2022 and the start of 2023. My girlfriend and I went to a house party at our friend's house in Northampton, which was fantastic fun. We got there late afternoon. Whenever I've done any sort of journey, have to have a cup of tea on arrival. That's the first thing I need. So they very kindly made me a cup of tea. Once the tea was consumed, then the champagne was opened and the night kind of kicked on from there, really. They prepared us some food as well. We had a great meal. Obviously, with my dietary requirements, me being a celiac, so therefore needing a totally gluten-free meal, that makes doing a dinner party a little bit trickier for the host. But I must say, they were absolutely fantastic. They also had a vegetarian cupboard as well. So they did 3 separate lasagnas. There was the meat normal lasagna, there was a vegetarian lasagna, and then there was my special gluten-free lasagna, which tasted amazing. They also supplied some handy flags to make sure I knew which food was mine. And I must say, they were slightly less polite than they are when you see them in restaurants, highlighting that the food is safe to eat for me and gluten-free. But that said, very funny. So as the drinks flowed after dinner, we played a few games. One of them was a picture caption game, kind of like Cards Against Humanity, but instead of a phrase, you had a picture and then you had a list of captions you could choose for that picture. That was quite good fun, and as you could imagine, very, very wrong lots of the time. We then played a game of Mr. and Mrs. We didn't play the whole board game, we just played one part of it. If you're familiar with the television show most recently hosted by Philip Schofield, in one of the rounds, there's like a paddle round where the couple are facing away from each other or they can't see each other because they're in a booth. A question is asked and basically their answers have to match. Sounds like a lot of fun, and it was a lot of fun. Me and Linda took our turn. We had a few goes through each. It was going really, really well. We were matching no problem at all. And then I made the mistake of giving a different answer to her, and she didn't really speak to me for about the next 20 minutes after. I just think the answer to that question was a little bit of a grey area, personally. Anyway, we recovered from that and had a fantastic night. Obviously, we stayed up past midnight. I think we may have tried to sing Auld Lang Syne badly, if I remember rightly, and we did watch the fireworks on television from London. They were fantastic this year. I thought they were really, really good. With the added drone display as well, they did look brilliant. One year when I was working at the BBC doing a night shift on New Year's Eve, we managed to get up to the roof of Old Broadcasting House for the fireworks. So I got to watch the fireworks on the South Bank from the top of the famous old BBC building, which was surreal, cold, and quite brilliant as well at the same time. So New Year's Eve was done. We'd said goodbye to 2022 and hello to 2023. Thanks to some spectacular scheduling by the Premier League and Sky, Tottenham were playing at home New Year's Day against Aston Villa with a 2:00 kickoff. I am a season ticket holder at Spurs, so therefore I had to get to the game. Simple as that, no question. I was staying the night in Northampton, so it was a bit of a challenge anyway. However, added to that, there were some engineering works and the trains weren't running that well at all. Luckily, I have a very good mate who very kindly offered to come and pick me up from Northampton New Year's Day morning at about 9:00 and take me to Milton Keynes so I could then catch a train from Milton Keynes to London to get myself to Spurs in time for the kickoff, which I did. I was in a very good mood. I thought this year started well. It's going to be a great year. Predictably, 2 hours later, Tottenham Hotspur had already taken the edge of things a little bit. They lost to Aston Villa, so it wasn't the ideal start to 2023. But it's okay. I do get a bit upset after games, but normally after talking to my friends at the ground and some fellow fans, I'm normally okay by about half an hour after, so it hasn't ruined this year so far. But I'd have preferred if we'd won that game, to be honest. Now, the reason there's been a little bit of a gap in the blogs is I've not been at home, so I've not been able to get to my home studio. I've been having some work done on my kitchen and my bathroom, which has taken quite a bit of time. and that meant I was going to be without water, electricity, a toilet and a shower for a while. Therefore, Linda very kindly offered for me to go and stay with her while the work was being done. Sad though this is, I'm now in my 40s and I'd never before actually at all lived with a girlfriend. I've been seeing Linda now for nearly 3 years. So obviously we have spent time together. We've been away on holiday together. We spent a couple of weeks at a time together. But up until this point, we'd never actually lived together properly. During the week, when we're both doing our normal things, both going to work, I'd never lived with a partner like that ever. So it was quite a test. It was a new experiment. Well, for me more than her, to be fair. In fact, I kind of moved in there just before New Year's Eve, because I actually arrived at her place on the Friday before New Year's Eve. And I stayed there pretty much all month. And I'm pleased to report it worked out okay. No real rows. We seemed to get on fine. Everything seemed to work. It was all good. In fact, I had a very good time. It was nice. We settled into our routines. Obviously, I had to adjust my routine slightly. She gets up slightly earlier than me in the mornings normally. So I thought, do you know what? To make it easy, I'll go to bed around about the same time she does, and I'll get up the same time that she does in the morning. She is not the best necessarily at always getting out of bed straight away as soon as the alarm goes. Me, however, as soon as the alarm goes, I'm up straight out of bed, ready to get on. So one thing we did develop was I would generally get up in the morning and go and make the morning tea for me, coffee for her, which I became quite good at. While I was doing that, she always had to leave the house earlier than me, so she was kind of getting on and getting ready. So that was kind of my role in things. And then, to be fair, I definitely had the better end of the deal because she always cooked the dinner and looked after the food. In fact, for the first 2 days I went back into work after New Year, she actually made my lunch for me. It was good. Unfortunately, it didn't last. I think due to me saying, look, I can do this myself, just about. Although secretly, I think I hope she'd carry on and keep doing it. But, that's fine. From then on in, I made it myself and it was all fine. As well as living with my girlfriend, we obviously did go out and do a few bits and pieces in January as well. We went to the new Soho Place Theatre. It's basically what used to be the Astoria. They kind of knocked it down and rebuilt this new modern style theatre. We went to see the Shakespeare play As You Like It. And I must say, it was absolutely fantastic. So good. I never did any Shakespeare at school, so I've made it my mission the last 10 years to see as many of his plays as I possibly can, and I absolutely love them. They're so good, they're so clever, they're so funny. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The staging was great, the cast were great, the whole performance was great. It also featured the actress and Strictly Come Dancing star Rose Aileen Ellis, who of course is deaf. And she was brilliant. The way they got round that was she and a lot of the other actors at certain scenes did sign language to each other also as well. And I really like this because Shakespeare's quite wordy. Some of the speeches are quite long and sometimes it's hard to keep up. They had every single person's lines up on big screens around the theatre. You could kind of keep up, watch it. Obviously, you could see what Rose was signing. She was fantastic, by the way. It was just such a good night. It was a really fun night out. Nice little venue right in the heart of London. I would definitely go there again to see something else, and it was just such a good show. The day after that, we went from one extreme to another. I have been a massive fan of the Mischief Theatre Company since me and a friend kind of almost stumbled across their original West End hit, The Play That Goes Wrong. I was aware of it before I went to see it. An actress friend of mine was talking about it and saying that she really wanted to go and see it. It had been on at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival the previous year, got great reviews. Everyone was saying, you must see it, it's brilliant. I went and saw it one afternoon and it wasn't, I'll be honest, at that point particularly busy. It was quite early on in its life in London. We paid for quite cheapest seats in the stalls, I won't lie, but we got upgraded to quite near the front, which is always a win. Honestly, I had never laughed that much ever in a theatre watching a play ever. It was brilliant. I think it's still one of the best things I've seen, just for sheer surprise, uniqueness, and the way it was executed. It's done so well. Since then, that play has gone on to Broadway. It's still showing in the West End as well. If you've not seen it, go and see it. I also have seen all of their plays. The Bank Robbery Goes Wrong, I've seen that. That's very good. I saw Grown Ups, that was excellent. And every time I've seen a new production, I've always seen it with the original cast members, which I kind of like because I kind of feel I know them all now because I've seen them do so many different performances. Anyway, last year in London, we went and saw Magic Goes Wrong, which was another one of their productions. That came about fantastically. When they were doing the play that goes wrong on Broadway, somehow they met the American magicians, Penn and Teller, got talking, and from that, Penn and Teller helped them devise that show. So there was loads of good magic in it that Penn and Teller had taught them to do, and loads of tricks that obviously went wrong. But it's quite hard to do something magical that goes wrong so well. If you don't believe me, I just ask you to go back and watch any old YouTube clips of Tommy Cooper, and you'll realise that to be a bad magician, you have to be a very good magician. So that was great. From there, there's a character in that play called the Mind Mangler, and his bit kind of worked. He kind of held the whole thing together. Well, Henry and Jonathan from the Misty Theatre Company, they took that character and his accomplice mate, who kind of tries to pop up in the crowd and help him with his amazing mind-reading powers. They wrote a show just based around their two characters. They took it to the Edinburgh Festival the other year. From that, it got a nationwide theatre tour. We went and saw it in Milton Keynes. We went to the matinee. It didn't start particularly well. As we were trying to get into the theatre, their computer system had gone down, so they couldn't obviously scan the tickets. So we were queuing outside for quite a while. We did wonder if that was part of the goes wrong thing. You know, it's their theme. Things don't work well. We thought maybe it was on purpose. It wasn't. It was an actual problem. In the end, the theatre had to print out a list of all the names and had to check your name off, like the school register. Anyway, we got in, which was brilliant. And as ever, they delivered. It's a very funny, very clever, very good show. There is some magic in there. There is some laughter in there. There is some jokes in there. There's actually a lot of real life in there as well. It's just really good. The Mind Mangler is what it's called. I think it's still touring, but I'm not sure for how much longer. It was just a very straightforward, funny Saturday afternoon out. Thoroughly enjoyed it. We met up with another mate of mine when we were in Milton Keynes. They come to the theatre with us, and then we went for food afterwards. Obviously, it was a celiac accredited restaurant, as they have to be. Now, went to Brown's in Milton Keynes, which was very nice. Had a lovely meal there and some nice wine, which is all very civilised. So we had a great time doing that. For Christmas, my present from Linda was a weekend away in Valencia. I thought initially she just was going to send me there by myself to give her a bit of a break, bearing in mind I've been living with her for pretty much the whole month. However, she did decide to make it a trip for two, so we both went the other weekend. I had not been to Valencia before. I've done a few city breaks. When I turned 40, I kind of decided I need to travel a bit more and see Europe, so I did Barcelona, I did Rome, and a few others as well. I did Paris when I saw the Moulin Rouge show in Paris, which was great. We flew out there from Heathrow on a Thursday morning. On the way there, it's only about a 2-hour flight, but it was my Christmas treat. So I did treat us to one of those small plain bottles of Prosecco on the way over, just to get ourselves in the mood. And like seemingly most European places, it's got a great metro system that you can get straight from the airport, straight into the city centre. We did that, found our hotel, checked in, and then went for a bit of a wander around to get our bearings. As you do, we found a few points and worked out things we might want to come back and visit later. Part of the reason we wanted to go to Spain was we both like good food and good wine, and you tend to get that there. So we managed to find ourselves quite a traditional little wine bar stroke cafe, which was perfect. Went in there to get a glass of wine each. Normally, my go-to Spanish wine is Rioja. Do like a nice Rioja. So I went in there. I was going to order a Rioja, but I thought, I'll just see. So I asked what red wines the barman had, and he said he had a Rioja, but he also had the local wine of Valencia. And I thought, well, I'm in Valencia. I need to try that wine. So I had a glass of that. It was really nice. I never had before such a light wine with so much taste and flavour and fruitiness. Also, it took me a little bit to get my head around this. They serve all the wine, red wine included, chilled. Reason being, I think, obviously it said red wine in particular should be served at room temperature. However, the guide for room temperature is about between 17 and 19 Celsius. That's what's classed as room temperature. So when we drink red wine in the summer, generally in the UK, Most of the rooms we're in, or if we're drinking it outside, we're probably drinking the wine warmer than it's designed to be drunk. Anyway, they serve it chilled. It was very nice. So we stayed in there for a couple of glasses of wine. That was great. We then went and found ourselves a nice little tapas bar just next to the hotel, had some great food in there. The other thing Linda got me for Christmas was a little pack of language cards, which basically explain that I'm a celiac and cannot eat gluten in lots of different languages. Obviously, I had one of these in Spanish, so this was the first time I got to go into this tapas bar, showed the card to the waitress, she had a read of it, had a look, checked with her manager, and basically it meant they could supply me a perfectly gluten-free meal, and they were very careful about the cross-contamination. Really good. It was a fantastic meal as well, nice introduction to things. In fact, generally, in Italy and Spain, the labelling's so much better on gluten-free products. It's actually easier for me to eat and find stuff to eat over there, which was really, really good. And one of the reasons that Linda chose the location where she did. So I'm having a fantastic time in Valencia. As with New Year's Day, only one thing could possibly ruin it. Tottenham were playing Manchester City away in the Premier League that night. I managed to convince Linda that maybe we should go to a sports bar. And yes, it was an Irish bar. Irish bars are everywhere, aren't they? There's loads of them in Valencia. So we went to this Irish bar to watch the Tottenham Man City game. At half-time, we're 2-0 up. I'm bouncing around the pub. I'm the happiest man in Spain. 30 minutes into the second half, we're 3-2 down. I'm not so happy. We lose the game 4-2. I wanted to go home at that point. I was like, let's just go back to the hotel, get asleep, get ready for tomorrow. Linda was like, no, let's stay for a bit. There was some music on. There was a bit of a dance floor. We hadn't really had a chance to be in a venue like that for a while. So we did stay, have another couple of drinks and a bit of a dance, which was good. Next day, one of the things we'd booked before we flew out there was a walking tour of the city. That was booked for 10 o'clock in the morning. On the way to the walking tour, not far from our hotel, there was a fully gluten-free bakery. A bakery where I could eat any of the cakes, any of the pastries, anything. We'd walked past it the evening before when we were looking around, and I saw this amazing chocolate donut in the shelf, just waiting for me there. I don't get to have donuts very often nowadays. It's quite hard to find a gluten-free one. I'd set my heart on having this thing. So on the way to the walking tour, we stopped off at the bakery and I picked myself up this chocolate donut, and I must say it was absolutely amazing. I loved it. Walking tour was really good. Constantine was our guide. He was a nice chap. It looked like at the start there might just be just two of us on this tour, but just as the tour was about to depart, a gentleman from Belgium come and join us. There was only the three of us. It was so interesting. He took us through so much history and showed us around the city. Learned so much. It's such a beautiful place. It's got some lovely architecture across all of the ages. It was at one point a Roman settlement. The Romans owned it. At one point it was ruled and taken over by Arabians. They were there for a bit. And then ultimately, at one point, King James of Aragon claimed the place for himself. He was the one who returned its name to Valencia. It was called that when the Romans were there, but then the name got changed. But he changed it back. He made it a kingdom as well. He decided it was going to be his kingdom, Valencia, and he was quite the character. I quite like King James of Aragon because it turns out he was a bit of a ladies' man. He had 12 official wives. They think over 30 official lovers, and he had about 25 kids. Just like an interesting guy. The emblem of Valencia is a bat. And if you look at all the major buildings, the town hall, all these sports clubs all have the bat somewhere in their logo. It's, of course, even on the Valencian flag. And the reason the bat is a symbol, King James was introduced to this very beautiful woman who he ended up spending the night with in a tent. And just at the moment they were enjoying themselves the most, shall we say, a bat flew into the tent that they were in. And at that moment, James thinks, such a beautiful moment. It was so loving, caring, exciting, whatever. And then this bat's there to share the moment. So he just figured that the bat was the emblem that Valencia had to have to show love, to show passion, to show delight. So that's why it's the bat. Also, the cathedral in Valencia, apart from being a stunning building, is also a basilica. Now, to be a basilica you have to have a recognised item of interest from the Catholic Church in that cathedral to make it a basilica. It has to be declared it by a pope. Now, handily, one of the old popes, very early popes, actually came from Valencia. So that was handy. So he actually brought a few things to Valencia in his capacity as pope. One of these was recognising that the cathedral in Valencia holds the Holy Grail. It has the cup, the artifact cup that Jesus supposedly drunk out of on the Last Supper. And this has been verified as much as it can be by the church. Can't be 100% sure, but our guide was telling us that the BBC done a documentary on the Holy Grail in Valencia about 5 or so years ago, and they'd done a bit of research on it, and they sort of, carbon dated it and did a few different things. And they said it was definitely from the time. The materials were used at that point, and the wear and tear is about right. I mean, they did say the only way they could possibly conclusively prove that it was the actual cup was to get some DNA from the man himself, but that seems fairly unlikely, to be fair. We didn't go and see it. We saw the outside of the cathedral, but we didn't actually go in and see that. There's also, he was telling us, every March, an amazing celebration that takes place. The cathedral is named after Mary, the Virgin Mary, so it is said there is a statue of her inside the church that can grant the women of Valencia 3 wishes. Can't give the men any wishes, but the women of Valencia can have 3 wishes at the feet of the Virgin Mary. However, one thing our guy did say is sometimes the men of the city try a bit of negotiation, because you can ask for 3 wishes, but only one of them will be granted. So what the men try and do is say, look, maybe could you take one of my wishes in as well? Maybe have 2 wishes for you, 1 wish for me, see which one she picks. Anyway, as part of that, they build a giant wooden version of the Virgin Mary outside the cathedral in the square for 1 week in March. And then what happens is all the women in the entire city, they bring flowers. They bring lots of flowers to this statue, and they get these flower designers in, and they basically make a flower decoration all around the wooden structure. We got shown some pictures of them from over the years. They look amazing. The women turn up in traditional dress and do that. The men are wearing traditional dress, and they basically just make loads of noise. They got drums, they walk behind the women, they make a lot of noise. It just looks like an amazing fun festival. I might have to go back for that one year. While we were on the tour as well, we also learnt that the people of Valencia have their own special drink. We were told about that, and the story we were told again involved King James, in that he was given that one morning and he declared it to be such an amazing thing. He called it basically golden nectar. He thought it was the best thing he'd ever drunk. And the rumour behind it is, certainly for the men, it gives them energy in certain areas that will help their relationships, and it is seen as very much a sort of staple part of their diets. We got introduced to it. He said this place that we walked past had a mural of King James where he explained the story where he declared it to be basically the drink of Valencia. He said this place serves some of the best, and it's called horchata. He says this place serves some of the best horchata in Valencia. So once the walking tour had finished, we went straight back there. We thought, well, got to try it, got to try all the local delicacies. So we went in and ordered ourselves this horchata. It's basically made out of what they call tiger nuts mashed down. It's like a nut milk, like an almond milk, and they add lots of other things to it, including about 2 tons of sugar, it seems. I like sweet things. This is possibly one of the sweetest things I think I've ever tasted, but it was really nice. It tasted great, and I did feel quite energised after it. I reckon it might be quite addictive, because for the next day I was kind of looking everywhere to try and see if I can get another glass of it. Yeah, it was good. I'd drink it again. Horchata. If you go to Valencia, you've got to try it. Now, during the afternoon, after our fantastic walk-in tour, there's actually a beach in Valencia as well. They've got everything. So we went down and had a bit of a look at the beach, got the metro down there, had a walk along the beachfront, had a bit of food looking out to sea, and also we tried our next local drink. There is a cocktail of Valencia that we tried. It's basically gin, vodka, orange juice, and a bit of champagne. Tasted very good, so we had a glass of that each. When you're in Spain, you have to have some paella. You won't find it better anywhere else. The tour guide suggested what he thought was the best place to get it in Valencia. So that afternoon, we booked ourselves a table there. And I must say, it didn't disappoint. It was a lovely restaurant. Linda booked it online, and she'd been learning a bit of Spanish. So she, when we walked into the restaurant, confirmed our reservation in Spanish. The waiter understood her, she understood him. It was a beautiful moment. We got sat down. Obviously, I brought out my celiac card as well, just to explain, which is good. They told me what I could and couldn't have on the menu. And then we had this fantastic meal, I must say. My starter was octopus. I never had octopus before. So when I saw octopus on the menu and saw that it was gluten-free, I thought I had to try it. That was really, really nice. Really enjoyed that. Perfectly cooked. And then the paella came out. Now, normally in Spain, the traditional way, it's a two-person meal, basically. So they do the paella, and it is to feed two. You order a paella, but it's for two. And they bring out the pan, they cook it on the table, and you help yourself from the pan. Now, we had the traditional Valencian paella because we were in Valencia. It just made sense. And that is obviously all the normal rice and spices and bits and pieces. Meat-wise, it is chicken, which is not that uncommon, rabbit, which was a bit odd, and I think may have been the first time I had rabbit, and there's some small mussels in there as well. It was really, really nice. The only downside, if you like, not really a downside, but the only gluten-free pudding they had was fruit. So I got a nice selection of fruit for my pudding. But to be fair, that was probably the healthiest thing I had the entire weekend we were there. What they tend to do as well at the end of meals in Valencia is they offer you a shot of this dessert wine. Again, that is sweet. I like sweet stuff, but it is really, really sweet. I did enjoy it, but it was almost a bit too sweet for me. That was such a good restaurant. If we go back to Valencia, we will be going back to that place. There really is so much to do there. The next day, we went out to the Biopark, which is the zoo they have where they claim, and it looked like it from visited, they keep the animals in as close to their natural habitat as they can. So we got the metro and walked out to there, had a really good look around the place. It was a great zoo. They had the classic animals, the elephant. I love elephants. Huge, majestic, amazing animals. It's just the way they walk. They're so big, but it's so gracious and so beautiful the way they walk. There was elephants, there was giraffes, there was lions, there was hyenas, lots of monkeys, there was baboons, there was orangutans, and there was a selection of apes and some big apes. One of the apes, I reckon he'd been around a while. He was a big, big guy, grey, big, massive, and to all intensive purposes, he looked virtually human to me. He was huge. You wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him or meet him in a dark alley, I don't think. Also, there were crocodiles, snakes, fish, everything you could possibly imagine. Flamingos were there, meerkats, of course. We had a really good time looking around the place, although one of my highlights weirdly was we went to the cafe there, which actually overlooks the giraffe enclosure. So you can have a drink and a quick snack while looking at the giraffes. I got there just expecting to be able to have a cup of tea. To my surprise, it being Spain and them being good at things like that, there was a gluten-free muffin that I could have. And I did. It's very enjoyable. Valencia's great. One afternoon we're by the beach. The next morning we find ourselves in the zoo. Now, obviously, before we went, we did a bit of research. And as I said, we both like our food and our drink. I have my dietary requirements with the celiac disease, needing gluten-free food. We found a restaurant in Valencia that was 100% gluten-free. Everything they did had no gluten in it. So we went there for lunch after we'd been to the zoo. Obviously, we'd worked up a bit of an appetite walking around there. So we managed to just get in. We timed it right. It was a very busy place. We literally got in and managed to get a table for two. They had obviously all the gluten-free beers there. So I had some of my favourite Daradam gluten-free beer. We had a bit of a tapas-style dish to try as much as we possibly could. We probably ordered too much. It was only lunch. We weren't really that hungry, but we ate it all. I was absolutely full. And they said, do you want to see the dessert menu? Now, obviously, I don't always get full range of the dessert menu. Normally, there's maybe one or two dishes I can have. I was absolutely stuffed, but I thought, I'll just have a look at the menu just to see. Had a look at the menu, and they had gluten-free waffles with chocolate sauce, cream, and vanilla ice cream. I mean, what man, or indeed woman, could resist that? Had to have it. I don't know how I ate it, but I did, and it was absolutely fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Again, if we go back to Valencia, we'll be going back to El Miracle, the place is called, and the staff in there were fantastic as well. I had such a good time in there. It was brilliant. Then all of a sudden, it's our final night there. It went so quickly. So we thought we'd better go out for some wine. So we went back to our favourite wine bar, had a drink in there, had a drink in some other bars, traditional Spanish bars around the city. Then we actually went back and had food in the end at the place we ate on our first night there, because it was near to the hotel and we had to be up to get away and get our flight home in the morning. One thing we hadn't had a cheese and meat night. You know, just the traditional platter, some traditional Spanish meat and Spanish cheese. So we put that right. We had a big feast of that. That was great. So good. And I did actually manage to get pudding in there as well. They had gluten-free cheesecake. So I was winning 2 puddings in one day. That is a good day, in my opinion. So that brought our short but fantastic Valencia trip to an end. Obviously, while we were there as well, in the town one afternoon, we did have some sangria in a place that claimed to serve the most refreshing sangria in Spain. And do you know what? I think they might have been right. It was probably the best sangria I've ever had. Really tasty. Then it was time to get the metro back to the airport and fly home. Over in Spain at the moment, they are still using face masks on all their public transport, which just seems to make sense. Also on the public transport, even when the train is underground, you can get full mobile phone signal. Just saying, UK. I've also found that in other parts of Spain and Italy. We seem to be so far behind sometimes with certain parts of simple basic technology and, you know, basic human rights. How can we tweet and Instagram about what we're doing if we can't get a decent mobile phone signal? I mean, I would definitely recommend going to Valencia. It's got a great atmosphere to the place. Everything's easy to get to. There's a beach, a zoo, great food, great wine, lovely people. And also as well, I didn't mention, it's got its own weather climate. It's surrounded by water and mountains, so it kind of keeps the weather in. Generally, it's always sunny and dry. October is about the only time of the year they get any real notable rain. And it generally is quite warm. When we were there, it was 16, 17 Celsius in the sun, which is a lot hotter than it was back in England at that point. But generally, in their summer, they can get temperatures of up to 30, 40 Celsius. It does get very hot. And they all seem very happy out there. Now moved back into my house, so I'm back at home now. So Linda's got a bit of respite. I think she's pleased about that. But it has been an interesting and fun month. I know people say January normally drags, but I've been so busy and doing different things and new and exciting stuff that it's actually flown by really quickly. That is almost it for today's Blogcast. Just a quick reminder that you can hear me on Radio 9 Springs Saturday afternoons between 2 and 4. Just go to radio9springs.com if you want to check out the show. That is it for now, though. Take care, look after yourselves, have fun, and I'll speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.